Well, welcome to episode 2 of Beyond the Known World. This story now is The Hitcher. It's a story that Nick the Egg sent in to win the hat in the competition. So just 1 second and we'll get listening to this story. The Hitcher. Just 1 second.
The Hitchhiker. Back in a cold January of 2014, I had spent the evening at friend's house discussing things that we needed to sort out at work. I left my friend's house about 10:30 p.m. that night, jumped in my car to start my journey back home. It was very cold that evening, and I'll remember well, wishing that the heating in the car would hurry up and start to work and give me some warmth. I had about a 20-minute drive in front of me, and this was a journey I had done several times before dawn. I was driving along the A361 between Bronton and Croy. It was cold out and very dark. After about 5 minutes, Elle noticed something, or someone standing on the grass verge ahead of me. As Elle got closer, Elle realized that it was a young woman, holding her hand out as if to attract my attention. The closer Elle got, Elle noticed that she was wearing a pair of jeans and only a lightweight-looking t-shirt. Elle thought this was very odd, as it was freezing outside. I was a bit apprehensive, but I stopped to see if I could help. I opened the passenger window and asked if she was okay. "I'm just trying to get home," she replied. I asked her where she lived. "North Buckland," she said. I told her okay and leant across to open the passenger door. She got in the car. It was strange, as she didn't seem cold at all, just happy that someone was going to give her a lift home. I started to drive again and headed towards North Buckland. This was a little out of my way, but wasn't a problem. The young woman was very quiet. Elle asked if she was cold, if she was okay, etc., and she only replied with yes and no answers. Things were a little odd, so Elle continued with the journey. As we approached North Buckland, Elle asked her where she lived. She looked at me and told me her address. I knew roughly where it was, so made my way to her house. As Elle approached the property, Elle asked her if this was it, and again, she just replied with yes. It was an awkward place to park, so as Elle reversed, I had to turn to face the rear of the car. It was very dark, but I parked the best that I could. I turned around to face the young woman, and at the same time said to her, "There you go, safe and sound," but to my amazement, she was gone. No longer was she sat beside me in the car, nowhere to be seen, nothing. I couldn't believe what was happening. Elle never heard the car door open or close. Where was she? I got out of the car, stood there for a while just looking up and down the road for the young woman, but there was nothing. I was baffled by the whole thing. I looked towards the house where she had told me she lived. There were lights on. Had she got out of the car without me hearing, and quickly ran inside her house? I was so concerned about what had happened that Elle decided that I had to approach the house and knock on the door, at least to see if she was home. I walked up the driveway. It looked like a nice, well-kept, presentable house. I got to the front door, realizing to myself that by this time, it was almost 11 o'clock p.m., but I had to know if she was okay. I knocked on the front door, and after a short while, an outside light came on, the front door opened, and I was greeted by a nice gentleman, probably in his late 60s, who asked me nicely, "Can I help you?" I explained to him where I had driven, and that I had given a young woman a lift home, that she had disappeared while I was parking outside. Elle basically told him the whole story. After looking directly at me for what seemed like forever, the nice gentleman began to tell me. "That was my daughter," he said. "Sadly, she passed away in a fatal car accident on the A361 in 1977. I was silent, stunned. He reassured me and went on to say, "This is the third time this has happened in 30 years, and as sad as this sounds, Elle guess she's just still trying to get home. But sadly, she never will."
Well, there you go. That's this. That's a story. It's a sad story, isn't it? I prayed for that woman's soul as well, and it's a true story. Yeah. So anyway, up next is story 2. Just 1 second. Welcome back to Beyond the Known World, episode 2. This next story is story 2, Hitcher at Bluebell Hill. Just 1 second and we'll get to it.
Bluebell Hill is a historic chalk hill in southern England. It's a designated site of scientific interest, but it's also a site of creepy interest to me. People have reported seeing ghostly hitchhikers here since the early 1970s. In 1974, a man reported seeing a young girl appear in the road ahead of his car. She collapsed to the ground immediately, so he stopped the car to help her. She was bleeding as if she had just been run over. Legend tells that she asked him, "Why did you hit me?" He covered her with a blanket and dove away to inform the police. By the time the police arrived, the girl was gone, but the bloody blanket remained. This is a story that has
supposedly repeated more than once. Wow, hey, wow. Anyway, stay tuned for story 3, the last story of this episode of James Higgins' Beyond the Known World, episode 2. 1 second. Hello! Well, here we are. This is episode 2 of Beyond the Known World. This is story 3, the last story. And just 1 second. It's called The Basketball Player. So just 1 second. 1 second.
It's a winter evening in Oklahoma in 1965. May Doria, driving to her sister's house from Tulsa to Pryor, sees a boy of about 11 or 12 hitchhiking on the side of the road. She stops for him. He gets into the front seat alongside of her, and they make idle chatter as they make their way down Highway 20. In their conversation, the boy says that he's a basketball player for a local school, and May reckons that indeed he has the height and build of an athlete. She also notices that he is not wearing a jacket of any kind, despite the fact that it's winter. And the boys seem to have no particular destination in mind. He points to a culvert on the side of the road and asks to be let out there. May is puzzled because there are no houses or lights anywhere in sight. Before she can even pull over, however, the youth simply vanishes from the car. May immediately stops the car, gets out, and looks around, but there is no sign of the boy. May later learns in a chance conversation with a utility worker that the same phantom hitchhiker was first picked up at the same spot in 1936. 29 years earlier.
Wow, well there you go. Well, hope you enjoyed episode 2 of Beyond the Known World, and in 2 weeks' time, episode 3 will be out. So thanks for listening, and thanks again for listening to for Beyond the Known World, episode 2. See you on the next one.